A 5-minute technical break. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues and guests. Allow me to consider open the meeting of Dissertation Council for the defense of Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna for the candidate degree on Speciality 230002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies, on the topic Comparative Analysis of the Political Process, Influence on the Integration Strategy of the State as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan. According to the order of St. Petersburg State University from the 8th of August 2019, number 8111/1, me, Vasilieva Natalia Alexeyevna, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor of the Department of World Politics of St. Petersburg State University, was appointed the chairman of this dissertation council, and also allow me to introduce to you my fellow board members. Lagutina Maria Lvovna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Associate Professor of the Department of World Politics of St. Petersburg State University. Kulakova Tatiana Alexandrovna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Department of Political Management of St. Petersburg State University. Baranov Nikolai Alexeyevich, Doctor of Political Sciences and Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. In the remote mode, we have Nurtazina Rosa Autalipovna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of Eurasian National University, named after Lev Gumilev, Kazakhstan. First, I would like to emphasize that according to the federal law from the 23rd of August 1996, number 127, Federal Law on Science and State Scientific and Technical Policy, St. Petersburg State University has the right to independently award academic degrees. The corresponding order on the procedure for awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, on the basis of which we conduct our meeting of the Council, was issued on the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, hereinafter the order. In accordance with this order, the meeting of the Dissertation Council is considered eligible if at least 2/3 of the approved membership of the Dissertation Council takes part in its work, but not less than 4 persons. There are 5 members of the Council. All of them are present, including one board member, who is in the remote interactive mode. Audiovisual contact is provided with him. Thus, we have a quorum. The procedure of today's meeting is the following. The total duration is no more than 2 hours. First, the Chairman's summary report on the main content of the documents submitted by the candidate and their compliance with the established requirements. Answers to possible questions, 5 minutes. Number 2, brief report of the candidate for the degree reflecting the main points of his research, 15 minutes. Questions to the candidate strictly according to the report, no more than 2 minutes for one question. Responses of the candidate. Number 4, the speeches of all the members of the Thesis Council by turns with reviews, with a statement of their positions, with questions and suggestions to the candidate. No more than 10 minutes for the speaker. Number 5, the speech of the chairman with his review, the answers of the candidate for the degree to the questions and remarks of the members of the Dissertation Council, no more than 15 minutes. Open discussion, speeches at the request of those present at the defense of the thesis of persons with a brief presentation of their positions and or with specific questions and proposals to the candidate strictly on the topic of the research. No more than 5 minutes for each applicant. At the same time, all interested persons are requested to register in the registration sheet and before submitting their speech fully introduce themselves. Number 8, final answers of the applicant to the questions asked, no more than 5 minutes. The speech of the scientific supervisor, no more than 3 minutes. A 5-minute break before an open vote in order to make a conclusion on the issue of awarding or not awarding the academic degree of St. Petersburg State University to the candidate. For the time of the discussion of the defense results by the members of the Thesis Council, the broadcast is turned off. An open individual voting, counting of votes by the chairman of the Dissertational Council with entering the results in the minutes of the meeting. Decision on awarding or not awarding the academic degree of St. Petersburg State University. The final words of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes. Before switching to the realization of the meeting's rules of the procedure, I remind you to switch off your mobile phones. Thank you for your attention. I also inform you that an audio and video recording of our meeting is being conducted, as well as a live broadcast on the website of St. Petersburg State University, and simultaneous interpretation of speeches from Russian into English or from English into Russian is also provided. Let me start the procedure of the meeting. Chairman's summary report. The dissertation of Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna for the candidate degree of Political Sciences on Speciality 230002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies, on the topic Comparative Analysis of the Political Process Influence on the Integration Strategy of the State as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan was accepted for the defense by the Scientific Secretary from the 8th of August 2019, number 8111/1 and number 8111/1, and I have already introduced it to you, dear colleagues and guests. The candidate submitted the following documents to the Scientific Secretary of St. Petersburg State University. An application form addressed to the rector of St. Petersburg State University, Professor Kropachev, about the acceptance for consideration and defense of the thesis submitted on the 7th of May 2018. The review of Scientific Supervisor Terapygin Andrei Vladimirovich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Department of International Relations of Northwest Management Institute, the branch of the Russian Academy of National Economy and Public Administration under the President of the Russian Federation, a list of publications containing 3 works which outline the main scientific results of the thesis, including 3 articles published in peer-reviewed scientific publications from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation. This certificate about successful passing candidate examinations issued by Russian Presidential Academy, certifying that Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna successfully passed candidate exams on Speciality 23002, Political Institutes, Processes and Technologies, History and Philosophy of Science, excellent, English excellent, and Political Institutes, Processes and Technologies excellent. The diploma about completion of postgraduate studies issued on the 8th of October 2018 in the Russian Academy, issued in the Russian Academy, Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, and she received qualification researching teacher. And according to the decision of the State Attestation Commission from the 20th of September 2018, the thesis is done in Russian and English, both in paper-based version as a manuscript and in the electronic form. The thesis is designed in accordance with the requirements of National State Standard R7.0. The thesis is printed on a multiplier with the indication of the output data in accordance with National State Standard R704. It should be noted that all listed documents comply with paragraph 12 of section 3, presentation and defense of dissertations, procedure for awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, appendix number 1 to the order. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And now, brief report of the candidates. I remind you that you have 15 minutes. Distinguished board members, allow me to introduce my thesis for the degree on the candidate of political sciences on Specialty 23002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies, on the example of the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan. In the modern conditions, Russian Federation and the Kazakhstan Republic are the examples, and the development of dynamics of internal processes are very important. And the study of such processes is impossible without the study of interaction between the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan Republic. And the actuality of this study is defined by the fact that the political processes in Russia and Kazakhstan are not completed. Russia and Kazakhstan is under transformation. And in every researched country, there is its own specifics of internal political processes, which is defined by national interest. And if we consider Russia, the development Eurasian integration is a trend. Of high interest is concentration of resources and the creation of flexible, diverse structures, eliminating of chaotization of the region, which would negatively affect the further development of the Russian politics. Kazakhstan, since its independence, is conducting the active work concerning the transition to practical plane of integrational processes, both in the direction of Eurasian vector and in the direction of Central Asian region, taking into account interests and priorities of the Turkic world. Active position of Kazakhstan in the sphere of integrational processes of Eurasian region is reflected in diverse initiatives, such as the idea of creation customs union, then Eurasian Union, and unified economic zone. And it is necessary to understand the influence of internal processes into these strategies. The actuality of the topic is defined by the importance of stabilization of political and economic processes on Eurasian space. Such researchers as Baranov, Laran, and others played the important role in this sphere. Kosov, Iskakov, Vasilieva, Lagutina, and others. The conceptual basis of this study are the concept of external policy of the state, the constitution of the Russian Federation, the message of the president of Russia, and the message of Kazakhstan president, and the strategy of Kazakhstan 2030 and 2050. Among widespread literature which is devoted to this study, there is lack of work which reflects the development of the politics of the Russia and processes of the integration. And it is an additional stimulus for the appearance of new problems and challenges, and for these reasons it requires monitoring and analysis of the latest changes in this sphere. The object of the research is political processes defining the integration strategy of Russia and Kazakhstan. The subject of the research is political mechanisms of integration, interaction of the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan. The aim of dissertational research is understanding of the specifics of the main trends of the development of political process in the course of the realization of integration policy of Russia and Kazakhstan. To achieve this aim, the following tasks should be solved: to consider theoretical and methodological backgrounds of the analysis of political processes, to characterize the peculiarities of the development of political processes in Russia and Kazakhstan at the end of the 20th, beginning of the 21st century, to systemize key factors of political processes influencing the elaboration of integrational strategies of Russia and Kazakhstan, to explicit interdependence of the internal politics of these countries. The scientific novelty of the research is in the fact that the author takes the attempt to analyze internal political and integrational factors influencing the development of political systems of Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation. Also, the following results can be defined: specific peculiarities of the evolution of political systems of Kazakhstan and Russia, the characteristic of modern state of political processes in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan Republic. There is author's explanation of the peculiarities of internal political processes in Russia and Kazakhstan in the context of prospects of the development integrational potential of Eurasian region. It is provisions for the defense. Modern integrational processes in former Soviet republics require in-depth theoretical explanation and understanding of main trends of of their development. It is necessary to highlight that the peculiarities of the development of political process are the following: democratization, market economy, transformation of the state, which occurs very quickly. Technologies of political management in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan should be aimed at the development of integrational potential of these countries. And to achieve this aim, it is necessary, on the one hand, to take into account national peculiarities, and on the other hand, search the ways of closing through management mechanisms. In the backgrounds of Eurasian integration is classical European integrational model, which requires qualitative recycle, taking into account regional peculiarities. The problem of further development of integrational processes in Eurasian region depends on the theoretical and practical managerial decisions connected with the specificity of the region. It is necessary to use not only economic but also cultural potential. Conclusions. First of all, in the process of transformation of political systems of Russia and Kazakhstan, the management tried to make triple improvement: democratization, transition to market economy, and state building very quickly. Apart from them, they borrowed Western political institutions, which are, for many reasons, were not suitable for their national political tradition. And secondly, for the process of political transformations in Kazakhstan, the concept of property power plays the key role. According to this concept, state economic sector and state apparatus interact to such extent that the state has the right to exercise a strict control over the activity of the subjects of the economy. And thirdly, the simultaneous character of political transformation of the economy and politics in the Russian Federation became the main problem, for the reason of that the state is not ready for such changes. Number 4, currently political processes in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan have a lot of similarities. These both countries influence world processes, and there are 5 main directions which are necessary for the integration of the state into global processes. Political process in Russia is characterized by the fact that in its basis there is an active political style, and there are similar provisions of the strategies of the development of Kazakhstan up to 2030 and the Russian Federation up to 2020. Number 5, internal politics of Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation are closely connected with integrational processes in the Eurasian space. And number 6, globalization and integrations create prerequisites and the conditions of forming social and political order, and they weaken the positions of national interests. There is correlation between the realization of the ideology of Eurasian space strategically capable of enhancing tendencies in the policy and economy, which will allow not only to restore the relationships and positive results of the development of national economies. Thus, the modernization of political processes in Kazakhstan and Russian Federation is able to influence the development of integrational structures. It is necessary to emphasize the further scenario of the development of Eurasian integration. The first involves gradual movement forward without any radical changes and deviations from the trajectory within the frames of realization of the agreement about the creation of Eurasian Economic Union in 2014. There are two reasons. The first one, the change of elites, and the second one, grievous consequences which are caused by a confrontation of the Russian Federation with the West. Russian Federation will develop Eurasian integration in the economic sphere with the aim to form and develop new pole of the modern world. And this scenario, it is subjective interpretation of the author, and the author is not sure that any specific scenario will be realized in the near future. Thank you very much for your attention. And the questions to the candidates strictly according to the report. And your answers no more than 2 minutes per question. Do you have any? There is a project, Big Eurasia, and from your point of view, does this project influence the relationships of Russia and Kazakhstan to our common integrational processes? And from your point of view, which of your scenarios is real? Yes, there is a project Big Eurasia, or large Eurasian cooperation. It can influence the relationships of Russia and Kazakhstan, but in the positive direction, because on this platform, in the course of different economic forums, additional mechanism for the solution of various problems can be applied. As for this scenario, I think that the most possible scenario can be scenario number 3, because today there is economic integration, and the main task of the member states is the creation of such internal conditions in the state which will allow to achieve some specific economic indicators which are necessary for the further development of integrational process. Are you satisfied with your answer? I have got 2 questions. The first, you often use such terms as strategy, integration strategy of the Russian Federation, integration strategy of Kazakhstan, and to what extent these strategies are similar and or different. It is my question. The comparison of these 2 integrational strategies of Russia and Kazakhstan. Thank you very much, Maria Lvovna, for your question. Integrational strategy, I understand this integrational strategy is a set of directions or conditions or mechanism of interaction of the state in different spheres, mutual development of which will give positive results for the politics of each state. And I would like to emphasize that there is no unified document as integration strategy, and some vectors of integrational cooperation are written in the state strategies. And having studied these documents, I came to a conclusion that integrational vectors are very similar in these two countries in terms of Eurasian direction. Can you list these similarities? There are general definitions, the development of border cooperation, cultural cooperation, cooperation in the educational sphere, and we have a very successful student exchange. And what are the differences? I would say that in the Kazakhstan strategy, there is a direction which is devoted to the integrations with Turkic peoples. It is based on their mentality, on their ethnical identity, and in Russia this question is not of such a high interest. And the second question, conclusion number 3. You write that the main problem, you came to a conclusion, is in the fact that Russia, the economic transformation was together with political transformation. And can you imagine any different situation? For example, in the Soviet times, we have planned economy, market economy comes earlier. Don't give hints, please. I would like to ask, are there any examples when the transformation of political system is going separately from the transformation of economic system? I can't give you any examples apart from China. I can say that, in my opinion, there are more examples when it is logically to develop economy and then on the basis of economic achievements realize some political reforms. I can't understand it, and I can't understand why it is a problem. It happened simultaneously. The transition to market economy was stipulated by some political events. I see the problem in the population within the period of the reforming of economy in 1990s. There were a lot of problems, and it influenced common people. They surmounted serious difficulties. Are you satisfied with the answers? Yes. Rosa Utalipovna, do you have any questions? Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. Slide number 8. There are some problems with the sound. Slide 8. There is poor sound in the microphone. We can't understand anything. Please improve the sound. Please use a microphone. What are the forms? Of multi-level. What are the forms of multi-level different speed integration do you offer? Thank you for your question. I did not define specific forms of multi-level and different speed integration. I have no experience and knowledge in it. Slide number 9. Please explain to me whether it is your own concept or you borrowed this concept. The concept of the property power I borrowed from the researchers. They are included into my literature reference list. They were explained by me briefly. Question number 3. Slide 10. And national interests. What are the reasons for the getting rid of national interests? I meant based on national starting point is the national interest. They take into account these national interests when they exercise activity. I understood it is a mistake. Are you satisfied with the answers? Are there any other questions? There are no external reviews. It is necessary to read out the reviews of our members of our dissertational council. Maria Lvovna, please take the floor. Natalia Alexeyevna, thank you very much. Allow me to introduce my report. Anastasiia Andreevna, could you please give us your dissertation? The review on the thesis of Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna on the topic comparative analysis of the political processes influence on the integration strategy of the state as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan. It is completed qualified research. The topic of the interaction of Russia and Kazakhstan, the elaboration of the integration strategies, two locomotives and living superpowers on the space of Eurasian integrations. Post-Soviet integration is on the agenda today. It is very actual today, more than 20 years. Our candidate states that the topicality, actuality of the research is these processes are not completed because post-Soviet and Eurasian spaces are under constant transformation under the influence of regional external factors, and as a result we have constant transformation and change of Eurasian strategies of these two countries. To most extent, I would add Russian and the extent of the reliability of scientific provisions are proved by representative selection, systematization, and the evaluation of works of Russian and foreign researchers. We can agree with the thesis that the author pays more attention to political and economic studies in Russia and Kazakhstan, and there is political processes which can influence the forming of the strategy. The content of the thesis corresponds with author's ideas. The study is logical and it is independent and completed work. I also want to say that the author made in-depth research, collected an interesting material, and it allows us to have complex understanding of such problems, and the main ideas and conclusions of our candidate are without doubt, but I have got several remarks, and let me announce them. First of all, the serious drawback is key concepts Eurasia and Big Eurasia. They are not explained in the work. It is very important to give definitions and author's understanding of such key terms. And in the introduction, the author gives a brief explanation what Eurasia is. It requires comparative analysis of Russian and Kazakhstan approach to understanding of these concepts. It is very important to show the difference in the approaches to understand Eurasia and Big Eurasia. The author uses the concept Eurasian post-Soviet space in the text of the whole dissertation, and I could not find the definition of this concept. And key concepts are not defined in the thesis. It is a serious drawback. Secondly, in this section, the extent of the study of the problem, Western researchers and Kazakhstan researchers were not taken into account. You write about Kazakhstan and don't use the works of experts from Kazakhstan. It is very strange and leads to the decreased objectiveness of the research. Kazakhstan and foreign authors are represented modestly. Such experts Marmontovna, Kazhirova, Aspanova, and others from Eurasian National University named after Gumilev, who actively elaborate the concepts and strategy, theoretical backgrounds of political strategy of Kazakhstan. In the first paragraph of chapter 1, when you analyze the political approaches, theoretical approaches, you did not take into account Kazakhstan theoreticians and Russian researchers such as Lapenko, Kuzmina, Gushev, Vinokurov also are not taken account, and official sites of informational agencies, they are not sources. They are platforms where you can find literary sources. Thirdly, this section, theoretical significance of the work, where the author points out that the results of dissertation research defines the range of further prospects. You should have specified them. Number 4, the main stages of evolution of political system in the Russian Federation, page 37, 2 stages. In 1999, 2010, there is the restoration of state role, and 2010 up to now the reinforcement of political institutes. I would like you to explain what such characteristics as minimization of parliamentarism mean, and the establishment of democratic institutes together with the authority of political leader. How can they correlate? Number 5, page 52. Quotation: the initiative on the government of the Russian Federation, which are offered to the society without any alternative, are stipulated by cultural and political pluralism of the society. How can the lack of absence of alternative can be stipulated by the pluralism of the society? Page 73. Apart from Russia, where political system in 1990s was not successful, in Kazakhstan the political system was successful. From the point of view of politology, the managerial system has a lot of features. And these are 2 different definitions. And also the following contradictory statements on page 105. The candidate describes the main intentions of Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation. Russia wants to obtain the status of regional superpower in order to create a new political and economic system. I don't agree with this statement. Russia is aimed at obtaining the status of superpower, and Eurasian integration is one of the tools of the returning of the status of this superpower. On page 124, the author states that shows is the Asian model of integration. Number 6, paragraph 1213, are devoted to the review of the political system in Russia and Kazakhstan, but they are not structured and logical. The author pays more attention to modern stage, starting with 1991. There is no analysis of the constitution of the Russian Federation in the paragraph which is devoted to Kazakhstan. The author is focused on the prehistory of the transition of power to Nursultan Nazarbayev, the end of the Soviet era. The constitution of Kazakhstan is analyzed in detail. These 2 paragraphs should be formed according to a certain scheme, some specific frames concerning the years. In paragraph 2.1, the theory of regional integration is poorly explained. There is no definition of the concept of political pragmatism, and our presidents elaborate this pragmatic ideas, and the role of CIS is not explained. The statement that Eurasian model is European model adapted to the conditions of CIS. Instead of main provisions of Eurasian strategies of Russia and Kazakhstan on the basis of political documents and official speeches of political leaders, there are a lot of program articles of Lukashenko, Putin, and Nazarbayev. They are not shown in the text of the thesis. Paragraph is poorly structured. Russia skips from Russia to Kazakhstan, from CIS to something else, and the conclusion is wrong. Kazakhstan should take geopolitical position of a link between Russian and China and Muslim world. Kazakhstan is against of geopolitical evaluation of it is a Russian position. For Kazakhstan, it is economic project. But nevertheless, the most part of my remarks is of discussive character. It was my opinion, and they should be explained by the candidates. And on the whole, in my opinion, the thesis of Nikulina, Anastasiia, Andreevna on the topic comparative analysis of the political process influence on the integration strategy of the state as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan conforms with the requirements of the order from 2016. And our candidate deserves the degree of the candidate of political sciences on speciality 23.000 political institutions, processes and technologies. Point 11 of this order was not violated by the candidate. Are you going to answer? Kulakova Tatiana Alexandrovna, please, the floor is yours. The review of the member of the Dissertation Council, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor Kulakova Tatiana Alexandrovna. The topic of the thesis is comparative analysis of the political process influence of the Russian integration strategy of the state as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan. The complexity of the trajectory of globalization and the processes of regionalization of the modern world face the problem of the elaboration of methodological and theoretical instrumentarium of regulating political and economic processes in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan. The character of integrational processes in Eurasian Economic Union, the specification of the notion Eurasian region as post-Soviet space, which should be logically called post-Soviet Eurasian space, historical limits and really regional belonging, the transformation of political relationships in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan is under the pressure of internal political processes which are reflecting the change of the national interests. The role of the Russian Federation, the creation of the Commonwealth of neighboring states, the policy of support of economic and infrastructural projects in Eurasian regions. Kazakhstan reflects the priorities of Turkic world in and Central Asian region does not only support but also initiates the idea of the cremation of the customs and Eurasian Union, unified economic space. Kazakhstan takes active part in acting regional organizations such as SCO and many others. The formation of a integrated political space and consolidation of the nation is within the frames of the model of the dialogue of cultures and civilizations, giving territorial integrity, security, and sovereignty of Kazakhstan. And the author points out to the development of effective system of regional and global cooperation of the Republic. It seems to me that we have to speak about what was done by the author from the point of view of our scientific experience. We can't adequately appreciate the contribution of Anastasiia. I'm not going to focus on the advantages of the study. I think that they are her scientific achievement, but I can say that the work is original. It is based on the analysis of the mechanism of interaction of integrational institutions which were created by both states. Of course, the work is deprived of modern view on the dynamics of interaction which we saw in the documents and meetings which took place in Omsk between the president of Kazakhstan and Russian president. We saw how important and harsh are the problems of integration. But nevertheless, there is a positive dynamics. But you know that the work was submitted for the defense in May, and by that time, political changes had occurred in Kazakhstan, and unfortunately, they were not reflected in the thesis. The appearance of a new president created a very interesting political configuration, but it did not influence the movements of both Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation towards integration, and in terms of economics. And I want to say that the work deserves support, and I think that Anastasiia showed worked hard. She did her best during this study, and she used methodology in argumentation when she proved her own model. And as any research, the research of Anastasiia Andreevna contains some drawbacks. It is the usual thing. For example, on page 112, Anastasiia Andreevna is sure that the Russian Federation is interested in forming civilization union to become to unite the countries, but she does not show that Kazakhstan president is not ready to number 2. Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, as the author points out, demonstrate the results of civilization and ideological choice between the liberalism of American, example Confucianism, of socialistic type of People's Republic of China, and Russian peoples, the peoples of Kazakhstan, the values of Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan are not the subject of the research and the thesis. Russia considers SCO as the method of the limitation of the influence of the USA in the region as a mechanism of minimization of the inclusion of non-regional players of the USA and Japanese. Japan, page 125, the author does not give arguments concerning Russia's ability to real integration. It would be successful argument. Activization of China in Eurasian space and especially in Kazakhstan is not analyzed by the author as the factor of Kazakhstan influence. We know that in Kazakhstan, China several factories were built, and there were problems in the relationships between the elite in Russia and Kazakhstan. And who is stronger in this region, Russia or China, with their own interests, which are realized specifically. The references to textbooks which were prepared authoritative scholars are not correct for the works of such level. We respect Pugachev and Solovyov, but I am sure that textbooks are impossible in for theses. The author considers that the civil society is weakly structured and political process is weakly structured. The author does not uncover the abilities of Russia and Kazakhstan abilities to develop non-imitation Russian and civil institutions. Number 7. These characteristics of political process in Russia at the modern stage, minimum level of interaction of the authors of political process contradicts to the conclusions on page 55, section 2, between the subject and the institutes of power. Number 8, the characteristics of hybrid regime was introduced. I would like you to specify your approach. I understand that it is a very complicated task. Both states can be referred to hybrid regimes. They don't fit in the poles which define modern political regimes. But my remarks, these drawbacks, don't decrease the overall, don't spoil the overall impression from the work. Thus, my conclusion, the thesis of Nikulina, Anastasiia Andreevna on the topic comparative analysis of the influence of political process on the integration strategy on the example of Russia and Kazakhstan conforms with the main requirements stated by the order. And our candidate, Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna, deserves the degree of the candidate of political sciences, submitted for the degree of the candidate of political sciences on Speciality 230002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies. Point 11 was not violated by the candidate. Thank you very much. As I understand, you will have the floor at the end. Thank you very much. I will focus on what was not mentioned, and Eurasian integrational process is of interest for the countries, non-democratic countries. Eurasian project has their own peculiarities in completion of changes the reform of political institutes, encapsulating modern traits and rating at cultural values, and the restoration of religion. Russia is the country with a developed economy, and Russia was successful and having considerable economic and political resources, which he could not effectively use in 1990s and 2000s, the Russian Federation did not want to be in geopolitical loneliness, and Russia decided to implement integrational processes with the countries which are and I agree with the author that the dynamics of the development of interpolitical processes in Russia and Kazakhstan as leading states of Eurasian project, and as the aim of the thesis is the understanding of specifics of main trends of the development of political process in the course of realization of integrational strategy in Russia and Kazakhstan. As positive moments which should be highlighted, I think that first of all, the thesis is not deprived of author's approach concerning integrational processes in Russia and Kazakhstan, economic development, national security, education, culture within the frames of international organizations. And scientific value is the conclusions of the author in terms of future development of Eurasian integration. And the vision of the future of European Union, the clash of national interests, the problems of politicization at this stage of its development. Page 119, the candidate explains the dependence of the creation of multi-side structures on the post-Soviet Eurasian space from the development of interstate political process and the influence on internal policy of the state of the integration process. And I agree with the author that realization of ideology of Eurasian space is strategically able to enhance central trends in politics and economy. And the results are the following: the specific peculiarities of modern political processes in Russia and Kazakhstan, authors' interpretation of the peculiarities of interpolitical processes in Russia and Kazakhstan in the context of prospects of the development of integrational potential of Eurasian region, different scenarios of the prospects of the development of post-Soviet Eurasian integration on the basis of the analysis of main trends of interpolitical processes in Russia and Kazakhstan. And apart from the advantages of this study, there are some disadvantages. On page 37, the author writes that since 2010, there was the stage of the strengthening of the role of democratic institutes and the strengthening of the authority of political leader. And mass protests because of unfair elections at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, doubts connected with the solutions of the courts concerning the convicts for non-sanctional meetings. On page 37, within the periods of 1991-1993, there was establishment of democratic political institutions, and on page 42 we consider the periods from 1991 to 1993 showed that the Soviets as the governmental bodies did not meet the requirements of changed political situations and public demand. On page 43, the author writes about semi-presidential political regime after the adoption of the Constitution of the Russian Federation. And more often, semi-presidency is connected with the form of government. And if the author characterizes such categories somehow differently, you should explain your position. And on page 61, the author writes that in January 1990, Article 6 of the Soviet Constitution was rejected, and on page 68 the author writes that Kazakhstan is a presidency republic, and in a presidential republic the president is the head of the government. And the candidacy of prime minister, which is offered by president, the parliament of Kazakhstan approves it. Nevertheless, my remarks don't spoil the overall impression from the thesis, and the thesis of Nikulina Anastasiia Andreevna on the topic Comparative Analysis of the Political Process, Influence on the Integration Strategy to the States as exemplified by the Russian Federation Republic of Kazakhstan, conforms with the requirements for the theses, and our candidate deserves the degree of the candidate of political sciences on specialities 230002, political institutions, processes and technologies. Point 11 was not violated by our candidate. Rosa Autalipovna, please. Thank you very much. I agree with my colleagues, with their remarks. Can you hear me? Today, political processes in Eurasian region unite the states, and they have the same language, similar social standards and political stability. And about these tendencies, there are many modern scientific researchers in Russia and Kazakhstan. In this context, the topic of the thesis of Nikulina Anastasiia, Comparative Analysis of the Political Process Influence on the Integration Strategy of the State as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan, has its own peculiarities. The author of the thesis considered the questions of the influence of political process on the integration strategy of Russia and Kazakhstan have key positions in Eurasian region, and it traditionally supports strategical partnership in economic and political trajectories. In modern conditions, judging from national interests and interpolitical processes in Russia and Kazakhstan, elaborate their own integrational strategies with the challenges of external and internal threats of globalization. Interpolitical processes in Russia and Kazakhstan are key factors, defining factors for the policies of two states in Eurasian region. The main direction of the interaction between Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation of the modern stage, the development of fuel and energetic complex, transportation and space spheres, the expansion of commercial and economic relationships, the enhancing of strategic partnership, in particular pre-border regions, and judging from all mentioned above, the topic of the thesis is very topical, and I'm not going to list scientific results. And evaluation number 3 of the obtained results. The structure of the thesis is corresponds the aim and tasks of the research. The thesis consists of 2 chapters: the peculiarities of political transformation and specifics of the analysis of political process on the post-Soviet Eurasian space, and managerial mechanisms of the regulation of integration and political processes in the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan. And the author tries to show its scientific positions. She uses comparative analysis. She critically appreciates political processes in Russia and Kazakhstan. Offers her own forecast scenarios which influence integrational strategy of the states. In the course of work over the thesis, Anastasiia Nikulina tested some aspects of the research on 3 international scientific conferences in 3 peer-reviewed scientific journals recommended by the Higher Attestation Commission of the Russian Federation, and in 4 scientific publications in Russia. As for the drawbacks concerning the content and design of the thesis, number 1, in chapter 2, our candidate could consider scientific researchers of the scholars and experts of the modern Russia and Kazakhstan on this topic within the last 3 years, 2017-2019. And it would enhance the picture of new tendencies concerning the influence of political processes on the strategy of the integration of Russia and Kazakhstan, in particular pre-border regions of 2 states. Number 2, also we can argue with bold statements of our candidate which are not proved by the facts and references to scientific and official sources. For example, the quotation from the text of the thesis. Of high importance for the comparison is the geopolitical aspect. Russia declared itself the successor of the USSR and declared about its responsibility in all post-Soviet space. Another example, the author does not refer to the sources and states the Republic of Kazakhstan was and is still polyethical state, but the interest of other nationalities apart from Kazakhs are less shown in political sphere. Why did not you use specific statistics with the reference? I would also like to ask you who can be referred to official opposition and national patriots in Kazakhstan. And another example. The government of Kazakhstan is still dependent on any manifestations of separatism and Russian ethical nationalism, neither at home nor abroad. And Mr. Putin has to take it into account, and the statement of our in 1997 the capital was transferred from Almaty to the south to Astana, and thus there was created a new capital of the country, and migration of ethnic Kazakhs was supported. And at the beginning of post-Soviet epoch, its government supported the immigration of ethnic Russians from Kazakhstan. There are no references to the sources about the fear of the first President Nazarbayev before pro-Russian separatism. I would like to emphasize that the capital Nur-Sultan, Astana, is not situated in the south. It is situated in the central part of Kazakhstan. Another example, our candidate writes that the government of Kazakhstan is depends on any manifestations of separatism and Russian ethnical nationalism, neither at home nor abroad. And Mr. Putin, in fact, should take it into account. Courts in Kazakhstan convicted to imprisonment several ethnic Russians who are the citizens of Kazakhstan and who were going to go to Donbass. I want to highlight that in the Republic of Kazakhstan, not any regulatory document has the term Kazakh courts. It is some maybe novelty by our candidates. I also disagree with the following contradictory suggestion of the author that Kazakhstan leader Nazarbayev is conducting its politics successfully, and many there is poor voice in the microphone, and there are no references to official sources or to scientific research of the scholars. New president of Kazakhstan, Kasim Jomart Tokayev, was elected by the majority of voices of the citizens in June 2019, and he is not aimed at pan-Turkism. And the statement of our candidate in the conclusion: since the moment of the acquisition of independency, Kazakhstan became a global country which had its own strategy of development based first of all on national mentality of the peoples of the country, its state peculiarities, national peculiarities, and only after that from global economic and political space. We have the institutes of development, and there are special centers under Presidential Academy. And when the documents were accepted by our dissertation board, and mass media the thesis has many stylistic and spelling mistakes, and the style of the text is publicistic style. But on the whole, the thesis of our candidate on the topic comparative analysis of the political process influence on the integration strategy of the state as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan and the work does not conform with the requirements given to the candidate theses. And in the thesis, political ethics was violated. And there is poor voice in the microphone. Rosa Utalipovna, thank you very much. According to our agenda, I will read out my own review. I think it is possible I will read out my remarks. I would like to emphasize a range of drawbacks. The realization of integrational integration, it is external political tasks which are connected with political transformations. It can be seen in the parts of the thesis where the author speaks about Eurasian problems. The conclusions are not clear. What is the scenario of the development of the process? The scenario, block of scenario is very poor. Thirdly, provisions for the defense are not of discursive content. They are only the description of these or that positions. Number 4, the work would be more completed if the author introduced chapter 3, and more attention could be paid to the comparative analysis of the position of two countries into democratic establishment. But despite these remarks and drawbacks, the thesis of our candidate on the topic comparative analysis of the political process influence on the integration strategy of the state as exemplified by the Russian Federation and Republic of Kazakhstan conforms with the requirements submitted for the theses, and our candidate deserves the scientific degree on Speciality 23/0002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies. Point 11 was not violated. And according to our agenda, we give the floor to our candidate. I would like to thank the distinguished chairperson and board members for the attention towards my work. I agree with the remarks and reviews. I will take all the recommendations into account. I would like to comment upon some of them. As for the remark of Ms. Nutazina and Lagutina concerning the literary sources, I would like to emphasize that the main stage of my research was in 2015-2017, and later I was not allowed to alter the text, and the sources of 2017, 2018 were represented. I did not cite it in my text, I only analyzed them. It is the report by Kazhirova, the movement, for example, the work of Gushin in 2017, also I used a monograph edited by Vinokurov, Eurasian Economic Union, published in 2017, but by unfortunate accident I did not include this work in the list of source. I would also like to know that in preparation for the defense of the dissertation, I studied the current scientific publications of 2018-2019, turned to open sources of information for updating data on political processes in the states. I studied in particular the election of new president of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. And for example, having studied the works of some Kazakh scholars, I emphasized that they are interested in Western theory. Also, I would like to emphasize I studied more actual scientific works of 2018, 2019. Also used the open sources of information for updating data on political processes in the states. I studied in particular the election of the new president of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. To the remark of the possible change in the interpretation vector of the development, I would like to comment that at the time of writing the dissertation research Nazarbayev still held the post of President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, so the text does not refer to Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, elected on the 9th of June 2019. For this reason, the author suggested but did not argue the possibility of a leader coming to power inclined to support the development and strengthening of cooperation with the Turkic people. The new president, in all likelihood, will continue the course of Nazarbayev, the policy of Nazarbayev. Since being the Minister of Foreign Affairs and then the Prime Minister, he made a great contribution to the construction and conduct of the political course that we are now implementing in Kazakhstan. Accordingly, I assume that he has no reason for a sharp change of opinion on this matter. Making an assumption about the possibility of developing the ideas of pan-Turkism in Kazakhstan, we based in particular on the scientific research of Seliverstova, Kazakhstan, Russia, Turkey, according to the pages of Eurasian ideas of the 19th century, according to which it should be noted that the Turkic-speaking population mainly lives on the territory of Kazakhstan. The state is a member of such organizations as the Turkic Council or the Assembly of the Peoples of Kazakhstan. The country declared cultural modernization aimed at reviving and strengthening national traditions. In preparing the text of the dissertation, the author considered various approaches and theories to define the concepts of Eurasia and post-Soviet Eurasian space. I agree with the opinion to such researchers as Sashko, who notes that there is no universally accepted interpretation on the very concept of Eurasia. With the advent of geopolitics, the interpretation of Eurasia as the middle world, the heart of the Eurasian continent, has appeared. Eurasia also is a special place of development, which is a single whole in geographic, geopolitical, historical, cultural plans. And as Yuri Kofner says, it is a post-Soviet or post-imperial space. And when we speak about modern integration, we take into account regional processes on this territory. And as for the remark of Tatiana Alexandrovna, I would like to clarify the concept of hybrid regime, of hybrid political regime. In the course of the study, we came across with various, sometimes conflicting characteristics of the political regime in Russia, and thus this concept became one of the options. The following key features of such a regime can be distinguish strong state power, concentration of power in executive state bodies, personification of state political power in the person of the president, trusteeship of the president as an expressor of public interest. And they allow to describe new political realia which appeared in crisis conditions and clashes of different social and cultural practices. Within the processes of hybridization, new properties appear. As for the comment of the process of transformation of the political system of Russia in the period since 2010, perhaps in this context, the word should be used, the modernization or reform of democratic institutions. The date 2010 is more suitable for strengthening the role of the President of the Russian Federation, as the process of the development of democratic institutions began a little later. For example, in 2009, President Medvedev, in his message to the Federal Assembly, formulated the goals and principles of a long-term strategy for reforming democratic institutions. In 2012, direct election of heads was returned subjects of the Russian Federation, as well as the liberalization of party legislation, simplification of the registration of political parties. At the end of January in 2013, amendments to the law on the election of governors were adopted, leaving the regions the right to decide for themselves which model of first-person elections to use, direct or indirect. In accordance with this new procedure, during the election of the head of the subject, each applicant will submit 3 of his candidates to the Federation Council, one of which, if he wins the election, will be vested with senatorial powers. The law came into force in 2013. It's also important to note that in the second section of Chapter 2, we note the growing role of China, in particular its influence on the economy of Kazakhstan, page 131. The author considers the Chinese project Silk Road economic belt as one of the important factors influencing the development of Eurasian economic integration and the national economic policy of the states studied. The strategy underscores China's desire to play a larger role in global affairs with China-oriented distribution network. The implementation of the project on the revival of the Silk Road should ensure a significant change in the economic sphere of the Central Asian countries. It should be noted the desire of China after the restoration of its part of the Silk Road to start investing in the construction of road infrastructure and a number of other infrastructure and transport projects in Central Asian countries. As for the Asian model of integration, here I relied on the previously mentioned monograph, The Global Eurasian Region, an experience of theoretical understanding of socio-political integration, in which this model is revealed using APEC and the Asia-Pacific region as an example. It refers to the Asia-Pacific model of integration governance, where the principle of open regionalism is noted as characteristic features, which is also characteristic of associations of the post-Soviet Eurasian space. In conclusion, I would like to pay attention to the scenarios of further development of integration that I proposed. The proposed scenarios are a subjective interpretation by the author of possible ways to develop an integration strategy. They were formed on the basis of the findings of the study. The author does not claim that any specific scenario will be implemented in the near future. The author admits the possibility of such an implementation based on its observations and conclusions. Thank you very much for your attention. All the board members, are you satisfied with the answers? Yes? Do you have any comment? The author said that she agreed with our remarks. If you have no objections, now I would like to give the floor to the scientific supervisor, Andrei Vladimirovich. Distinguished board members, I will try as brief as possible. Anastasiia Andreevna graduated from the Presidential Academy in 2018. She is very serious about the science and her professional activity. She works at the administrative office of St. Petersburg Governor as an assistant of Vice Governor of St. Petersburg. He graduated from the university with a red diploma. Then she graduated from Presidential Academy in 2018. Dear colleagues, in my opinion, we have mature young scholar, very experienced scholar, and the topic which she took, complicated topic for her research, is closely connected with her professional activity. In my opinion, the thesis is completed work. The results are of independent character. They are clearly argumented. The main results are published in Russian scientific publications, and 3 of them are among the leading journals recommended by High Attestation Committee, and 2 articles are published in the International Analytical Journal, Eurasian Integration, Economic Law and Politics. Distinguished board members, I am not going to list all the documents which should be listed. I want to say that in my opinion, Nikulina Anastasiia Andrei deserves the degree of the candidate of political sciences on Speciality 23/002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies. Please support our candidate. And in accordance with the agenda, we are going to discuss our decision. Please turn off the sound during the broadcast of the meeting. Guests and colleagues who are not board members, I ask to leave the hall, and I will invite you when our consultation meeting is over. The meeting continues. I ask you to switch on the sound of the meeting's broadcast to make sure that it is working. The conclusive minutes of the Dissertational Council's meeting are coming. I raise the question of awarding an academic degree to an open roll call. I remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council on the issue of the awarding the degree is considered positive if more than half of it voted for, but not less than 3 members of the Dissertational Council who participated in the meeting in accordance with paragraph 23 of the procedure for awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. Appendix number 1 to the order. Board member Lagutina Maria Lvovna, your opinion. I changed my opinion. I am against. Board member Kulakova Tatiana Alexandrovna. I agree with the awarding the academic degree of the candidate of political sciences to our candidate. Nikolai Baranov, I'm for. Nurtazina Rosa Utalipovna, your opinion. I'm against the awarding academic degree. And the opinion of Chairman Vasilieva Natalia Alexeyevna, I'm for the voting and counting of votes and the announcement of the results of voting. Thus, dear colleagues and guests, I declare that out of 6 members of the Council participating, out of the 5 members of the Council participating in the meeting of the Dissertation Board, 3 are for, against 2, and no abstained people. And the decision on awarding the academic degree of the candidate of political sciences on Speciality 23002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technologies, was accepted. And the final words of the candidate. I would like to express my gratitude to the board members, to the chairman, for the opportunity that you found time to study my thesis. Thank you very much for your remarks. I will take them into account in the future. I would like to thank my scientific supervisor that for a long time he supported me and helped me. Thank you. The meeting is declared closed. Thank you all for participation. Please switch off the live broadcast.